Hello, everyone. This is DRAT Poetry and Plays. My name's Rob, and I'm joined here by David and Trish. Hi, David and Trish.
Hello there.
Hi.
And this week we're going to do something a little bit similar to what we did in the last recording. We're going to be reading some of our favourite poems. And then we have each written our own poems, and we're going to perform that at the end. So, who would like to go first?
Well, shall I go first? Yeah, I'm quite happy to do it. Yeah.
Thank you for volunteering, David.
Okay, it's one of the weary isolators here, part of the DRAT team. And two poems that I'm going to read to you. The first one by the Liverpool poet Roger McGough, and then the second one by the Scottish bard Robbie Burns. So here is the first one, called The Sound Collector. A stranger called this morning, dressed all in black and grey, put every sound into a bag and carried them away. The whistling of the kettle, the turning of the lock, the purring of the kitten, the ticking of the clock, the popping of the toaster, the crunching of the flakes, when you spread the marmalade, the scraping noise it makes, the hissing of the frying pan, the ticking of the grill, the bubbling of the bathtub as it starts to fill, the drumming of the raindrops on the window pane, when you do the washing up, the gurgle of the drain, the crying of the baby, the squeaking of the chair, the swishing of the curtain, the creaking of the stair. A stranger called this morning, he didn't leave his name, left us only silence, life will never be the same. Now the next one is by the Scottish bard, basically Robbie Burns. It's not done in a Scottish accent, but I think it's a lovely poem nonetheless. It's about true love, of course, and it's called Red, Red Rose. Oh, my love's like a red, red rose that's newly sprung in June. Oh, my love's like the melody that's sweetly played in tune. As far out thou, my bonny lass, so deep in love am I, and I will love thee still, my dear, till all the seas gang dry. Till all the seas gang dry, my dear, and the rocks melt with the sun, and I will love thee still, my dear, while the sands of life shall run. And fare thee well, my only love, and fare thee well a while, and I will come again, my love, though 'twere 10,000 miles. May thee.
Oh, hang on. It says my internet connection isn't stable. Sorry, I thought because you paused there for a second. I think you'll call the poem, David, so that's all right.
Okay.
Okay. Excellent, David. So who would like to go next? Well, it's either me or you, Trish.
Want me to go?
Yeah, we can do.
Yeah. Okay then. Right. Hi, I'm Trish. I've chosen a poem, in fact, two poems by Seamus Heaney. And the first one is Scaffolding. And Scaffolding, I chose this poem as I like to make sense of a poem. I enjoy searching for a meaning and linking the poem and life together. This poem is about bonds of love and friendship. It is strong and true and literally well constructed. This was one of Seamus's first poems. He wrote it to patch up a problem he and his wife Mary were having at the time. It has also been used on many occasions, emotions, because it's clever, strong and true. So, scaffolding. Masons, when they start upon a building, are careful to test out the scaffolding. Make sure that planks won't slip at busy points, secure all ladders, tighten bolted joints. And yet all this comes down when the job's done, showing off walls of sure and solid stone. So if, my dear, there sometimes seems to be old bridges breaking between you and me, never fear, we can let the scaffolds fall, confident that we have built our wall. And the second poem is titled Slow Gin. And I chose this poem as it provokes long ago memories of a young officer's wife on the Patch, which is where we used to live. The wives would get together and host morning coffee, afternoon teas, or in my neighbour's case, breakfast, where she served homebrew instead of orange juice. Slow gin, elderberry wine, and anything else laced in alcohol. I can't remember much more. This poem proposes a lyrical toast to a sloe gin and to the women that produced it. I like the way the poem salutes the creation of an enjoyable tipple, just as we saluted the officers' wives' parties. Sloe gin. The clear weather of juniper darkened into winter. She fed to sloes and sealed the glass container. When I unscrewed it, I smelled the disturbed, tart stillness of a bush rising through the pantry. When I poured it, it had a cutting edge and flamed like Beetlejuice. I drink to you in smoke mulled blue, black sloes, bitter and dependable.
Very cool.
That's my two.
Very good.
Well, I suppose it's me up next. I'll begin with something that's quite short and sweet. It's only 4 lines. And I'm going to be reading from a little black book collection. It's called Tiger Tiger. I think Penguin released it. It was only £1. They actually had, they released, I think, about 50 in this series. And this one's Tiger Tiger, William Blake. And the particular poem is called The Lily. The modest rose puts forth a thorn, the humble sheep a threatening horn, while the lily white shall in love delight, nor a thorn nor a threat stain her beauty bright. All right, and then my second poem is by Philip Larkin, and this one's called To the Sea. To step over the low wall that divides road from concrete walk above the shore brings sharply back something known long before, the miniature gaiety of seasides. Everything crowds under the low horizon, steep beach, blue water, towels, red bathing caps, the small hushed waves repeated fresh collapse up the warm yellow sand, and further off, a white steamer stuck in the afternoon, still going on, all of it, still going on. To lie, eat, sleep in hearing of the surf, ears to transistors that sound tame enough under the sky, or gently up and down lead the uncertain children, frilled in white and grasping at enormous air, or wheel the rigid old along for them to feel a final summer. Plainly still occurs as half an annual pleasure, half a right, as when, happy at being on my own, I searched the sand for famous cricketers, or, further back, my parents, listeners to the same seaside quack, first became known. Strange to it now, I watch the cloudless scene, the same clear water over smoothed pebbles, the distant bathers' weak protesting trebles down at its edge, and then the cheap cigars, the chocolate papers, tea leaves, and, between the rocks, the rustling soup tins, till the first few families start the trek back to the cars. The white steamer has gone. Like breathed-on glass, the sunlight has turned milky. If the worst of flawless weather is our falling short, it may be that through habit these do best, coming to water clumsily undressed yearly, teaching their children by a sort of clowning, helping the old too as they ought. And that was from this. It's the collected poems from Philip Larkin. I got this a couple of years ago. It's a really nice, edition.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Great. So now onto our own poems, I guess.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Should we follow? Should we go with you first, David?
Yeah, okay. I'll say it's the same as one I rehearsed last week. It's called The Lockdown Poetry. And really it's to do with, well, first of all, it's a tribute to my fellow sort of weary isolators, both Trish and Rob. So it's appreciation by myself. And it's just a fun thing, really. It's also an attempt to get people to join us. I know they might be reluctant, but, you know, come along and just see the fun you can have. Anyway, it's called Lockdown Poetry. An eclectic collection of an isolated weary three decided to get together to recite some poetry. A strange decision, you might ask, and indeed take us very much to task. However, it was agreed that Fridays would be the selected day to meet and each have their collective say. The three amigos bravely started out, Trish, Rob and David, with just perhaps a tad of doubt. The weekly get-together is now available for your delight, the sound of the spoken word to whet your appetite. The podcast is now our favoured medium. Our collection will be regarded as somewhat bohemian. So if you admire our splendid mellifluous flow, come and join us in our weekly show. The regular broadcast is now well established, thus plenty of time to hear your favourite passage. All are welcome to our cosy coterie. Let's stand up and be counted for the love of poetry.
Wonderful.
Brilliant.
That poem is actually on our blog now.
Excellent.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
Trish, you're up next.
Okay, so this is my poem, a sort of reflection to the scaffolding poem that I read earlier. In love we trust. In love we both do trust. Whatever happens, it's always discussed. No harsh words before we sleep. Our love is strong, it's good to keep. Solid as a rock, you and me, wise and weathered like the old oak tree. You are my rock, my salvation. Together strong, we've built this foundation. Rich in love, wise with time, no mountain too high to climb. Together, you and me, that's how it will always be.
Wonderful.
There you are.
Very good. Very good indeed. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so my poem I wrote after I'd read To the Sea by Philip Larkin. And this one's called To the Sea and Back. People cluster together on a bright beach. A big-bellied man in swimming shorts frolics in the sea, water warm and wild, while a pale woman, graceful and petite, places a rainbow-coloured beach towel on the sand. Ice creams and lollies are hastily licked, and footballs are booted about the beach, a dog or two chasing with wagging tails. But as sudden as mighty sharks or second waves, heavy clouds cover the sky and sun, and thick raindrops fall like nails. Yelping like scared birds or foxes erupts as bold droplets sting the skin with cold. It's as though being pelted with snow, says one. The towels, balls, and lollies are discarded as near-naked people flee from sea and sand. The car doors all slam in unison, and engines roar away over the hill. The rain crashes against the beach, and yet sea and sand still prevail.
Sounds like my last trip to the seaside.
It's a typical British trip to the seaside, isn't
it? Very good. Very good.
I was a little bit worried I went overboard with the alliteration because there's quite a bit of alliteration in there, but I think it was all right.
No, it was good. I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. Well, actually, I'd like to read the poem that was up for, speaking this morning, if you like, or reciting, because it's only a very short one.
Yeah, sure.
By a poet called Robert Herrick, who was the 16th century poet. He was the author of called I think it's pronounced Hesperides, or the works both human and divine of Robert Herrick, Esquire. And really, the title says it all, basically. It says the title is To the Virgins to Make Much of Time. So it really explains the whole thing. And it's only, in fact, 4 verses, actually. And it is a very, very famous poem. Here we go. To the Virgins to Make Much of Time by Robert Herrick. Gather ye rosebuds while ye may, old time is still a-flying. And this same flower that smiles today, tomorrow will be dying. The glorious lamp of heaven, the sun, the higher he's a-getting, the sooner will his race be run, and nearer he's to setting. That age is best which is the first, when youth and blood are warmer, but being spent the worst and worst, times still succeed the former. Then be not coy, but use your time, and while you may go merry, for having lost but once your to prime, you may forever tarry. And that is by Robert Herrick. And of course, it's the first line, gather ye rosebuds, basically, which is, one of those phrases in the English language, basically, which is very, very well known, basically. Yeah.
What century was that poem from?
It's probably from the early 16th century. I'm saying he was born in 1591, and obviously it's spanned 2 centuries, dying in 1674. But gather ye rosebuds as an actual first line is stuck in the English conscience, I think, really, and I've seen it used many, many times.
Very good.
Very good. Yeah.
Actually, there was a really good line in the poem you read, Trish, in the one that you wrote, and I can't remember what it is. It's something like, it's something to do with love and time. There was a line where you mentioned love and time.
Rich in love, wise with time.
That's it.
No mountain too high to climb.
So, rich in love, wise in time. I think that's a really good line. That is.
It just sort of. Sorry?
No, go on, you go.
I was just saying, it's sort of the scaffolding poem. It just feels so strong to me, and you can relate it so well. And it's interesting because I was listening to Seamus Heaney. It was a recording, obviously, because he died in 2013. But he was talking about how he came about his various poems, and they've always got a life story behind them. And the scaffolding one was he and his wife had a bit of a disagreement, and he went off to sulk, and so he put it in poetry and came out with that. And a lot of his other poems are like that. He did a really nice one about stillborn, and it was a very poignant one about a friend who she unfortunately lost a baby. And it's really powerful, really strong, and it's nice, I think, when poetry can be really meaningful and personal too.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a nice link for broadcasting, actually, between the scaffolding poem and actually the poem that I read by Roger McGough, because I'm saying in terms of linkage, in terms of putting across the podcast, scaffolding, of course, then leads on to Roger McGough, who used to be a member of the Scaffold, which was a comedy sort of pop group in the 1960s, and did Lily the Pink and things like that. So, it's almost from the sublime to the core blimey, actually, in terms of the link and things like that, basically, So,
brilliant.
Yeah, just a thought, actually.
Yeah, really good link. Yeah, that's brilliant.
The sublime to core blimey could be the title of our book, our ebook that we're going to put
out. I like that. That's really good.
Well, thank you for listening, whoever you are, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye. Cheerio.
Bye.